Jared, here we go for one last time in 2015, and of course we hope we're back too. Tonight we look at how Alistair Clarkson, the master coach, transformed Hawthorn from easy beats to a powerhouse, and the four-time premiership coach, well, he's been booked in since last March. He joins us to reflect on his amazing footy career.
The Hawks continued their round of coaching interviews today. Alistair Clarkson putting his case forward.
Hawthorn, the champions. The best team all year, back on top of the mountain. Hodge will kick a second, he does.
Nobody and nobody could stop them.
So Hawthorn have done it. The first team in the 18-team competition to go back to back to back. They're three Peters.
Yes, it was a journey that began with a job interview in 2004 for a relatively unknown Alistair Clarkson. 11 years on, he's a giant of the game. And for the third successive time, he'll join us as our special guest on the couch. Hello and welcome to our final show of the year. The man who first employed Alistair Clarkson joins us on the couch as well, along with David King and Jonathan Brown. It's a special moment for you and the club, Jason. I know you're very much an independent these days, but you must have been under enormous pressure when a relatively unknown Alistair Clarkson knocked on your door and you liked what you heard.
Yeah, I did. I mean, this is going back a long time. It's you talk about risk-taking, but we were in a position where we had no option. We were rock bottom. And he was a fresh-faced young fellow with some pretty good ideas, pretty exciting ideas about A, how to run a footy club, and B, how the game needed to be played. And I think we've seen that evolve over the last 11 years into something extremely special.
It's the second time I've discussed this with you. It's an incredible story for Alistair, though, as well as the club. The club has come back from almost merging, and he's led the way.
Yeah, he has. I mean, he set the standards the moment he walked in the door. The demands that he put on not just the players but the rest of the staff and everyone involved, at times rubbed a few people the wrong way and had some rough edges that we needed to chip off him, but he's, he leads by example.
One final one. Do you see a Kevin Sheedy era coming through here? Clearly they'll extend the contract over the summer months. How long's he going for?
Oh, it's hard to look that far into the future, but the way he's coaching, I mean, the thing about Alistair is he evolves with the game almost year to year, and even within a season he can adapt his game plan. So I think he probably doesn't see a career lasting that long, but I've got no doubt he can go as long as he wants.
Brownie Kingy, we didn't get the game we were really chasing. It wasn't as competitive as we would have liked, but once again, Hawthorn has stamped their superiority on this competition. The question is, who's going to chase them?
Well, the sides of chase, if they stay still, which we know Clarko won't allow them to, they'll go past. But there's a few up-and-coming sides. I think we saw West Coast this year was tremendous improvement. There's going to be one of those sleepers somewhere in the bottom 10 there. Western Bulldogs, Adelaide, we know they've got to tighten quite a few things up. And then depends on the top four guys. You just question marks about Sydney and Fremantle. How are they going to hang on there? And there'll be question marks on Hawthorn because of the ageing players. But at the moment, they're the hot favourites, Sharon.
Well, we've shown you two graphics there. One premiership since 1960. That was Mike Sheehan's year when he thought that's when the modern era began. And this is AFL flags. And right now, your club, Jason, are the most successful club.
Yeah, it's been a really good period and very excited, just as a Hawthorn supporter, Jared. You love seeing your club have success and you just wonder the way equalisation works, the draft, the draw, all those sorts of things. We keep thinking these sorts of things won't happen, and yet people within the AFL structure find a way to have continued success.
I thought we won our third and we're going for our fourth. I know, I thought it wouldn't happen for 50 years. So just the way the game was going and how hard it is on the players, especially the older players, to be able to keep backing up. It's an extraordinary effort, and I think they've been through more adversity than any side in the history of the game, I reckon.
David, you played in two premierships. There's been just under 12,500 players play the game.
Yep.
Just 66 players have won 4 or more premierships.
That's amazing, isn't it? They've had some company. You've just recently joined them on the weekend, Jared, as you said. 25 players have won 5 premierships or more. Only 6 premierships or more. And obviously Tucky sitting there
Father time.
all alone on 7, which is an unbelievable number. But there's nothing to say that this group can't go again. Just keep rolling on, because equalisation hasn't gripped Hawthorn in any way, shape or form. They've been ahead of the curve, Jared. They really have. They've They've been ready with their free agency activations, ready with their trades, and we'll go through the build in a moment. But these guys here, I mean, there's nothing to say that a Grant Birchall or Cyril Rioli, at their age, could get another opportunity.
Who do you expect to go, Jason, from the Hawthorn Immortals?
Who do I think is going to retire? I suspect David Hale, perhaps. Brian Lake's an interesting discussion, and I'm looking forward to asking Alistair Clarkson that, because you probably thought it was the perfect way to go out. He's come over for 3 years, won 3 flags, but he won't go away. He wants to keep playing. And the thing is, he puts his hand up in September, doesn't he, which is a very important time to play well.
Well, let's find out what you specifically learnt. For me, a lot was made of the defensive structure from the West Coast Eagles. The Webb, we've spoken about it a lot on this program when we first acknowledged it mid-season. But the reality is, if you come to the MCG, it doesn't matter what defensive system you have to win the one-on-ones and the contested ball. Going into the game, West Coast Eagles were number 1 in the competition, averaging plus 11. The Hawks were about mid-table. And midway through that last quarter, they had an advantage of 26. Add on the minus 11 or the plus 11, they're down 31, David. That's 37 opportunities to re-kick, start your scoring abilities.
It's the start of an attacking chain, isn't it? 37 opportunities is a massive amount. You can't lose contested possession to Hawthorn and expect to be in the game, Jared. It's as simple as that. The way they use the ball, their structure, Clarkson's system, will get you eventually. You need to have some sort of advantage there, and the Eagles just lost that on the weekend, didn't they? They were simply too tough for them.
Yeah, from the first minute to the last minute. Brownie, what you learn?
Well, no, contested footy led to the uncontested marks, and for Hawthorn to walk away with 130 uncontested marks in the grand final would be bitterly disappointing to Simo. So it was about 90 to 20 in the second half, so they really just gave up that real defensive accountability. We talk about this Weagles Webb. At some stage, though, you need to man up. You can't rely on zoning against a really good precision kicking team. And that's the question mark for the West Coast Eagles going forward with this system. They need to be really good at the trenches. And so many times, West Coast Eagles had outnumbers where the contest was, and they still lost it. And this allowed the Hawthorn side to set up so well. They got their kicking game quite early on. They settled beautifully early. They didn't let West Coast settle.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I wouldn't throw out the system. I would be absolutely running with it again. Maybe add an Eric McKenzie. I've got no doubt that we're going to see elements of this in just about every defence next year. But if you don't apply one-on-one pressure, any system will fail.
That's the question mark. Can these players have defensive man-on-man accountability when it's needed? Are they good one-on-one players? Because I look at the other end and Hawthorn's zone really well. And their Hawthorn defenders, led by James Frawley, can play man-on-man accountability. There's question marks for me, Jared, especially over some of the small and medium defenders there. Anyway.
Jason?
We spoke last week after the preliminary finals where West Coast kicked 10-20 and said if they did that again, they'll be in trouble.
That's right.
We'll show you a point in time during the game where the score is 9-3 to 3-9. Now, they were clearly getting outplayed, Jared.
Yeah.
But if you take your chances, you have an opportunity to hang in there in the game in the hope that you can turn things around later on. They kicked away any hope they had of staying in.
Wasn't it frustrating each and every time they had that opportunity to nail it? And it just it took away so much of what we hoped for in the great game. Finally with you, David.
The big game performers. Sam Mitchell's record in finals is amazing, and he didn't let us down the weekend. His vision, his composure in traffic, in space, in any area of the ground is simply awesome. His handballs, he had 15 handballs.
Yep.
He didn't waste one of them, Jared. They were absolutely spot on at putting his teammates into space. And Luke Hodge is the other one. We talk a lot about Luke Hodge with his direction, his ability to instruct, but we don't often talk about his ability to inspire. And that goal there really separated the two. And it, for me, showed the difference between the two leadership groups, those two gentlemen. But one thing we really did learn, Jared, is that Pinocchio Dunstall has been lying to us all year. Every time I've asked him about the Hawks, he's had comments like this to say.
It's a great challenge now for Alistair Clarkson and this group of players because they are very, very vulnerable. I don't think they've hit anywhere near the levels of the last 2 years thus far this season. In all seriousness, that is an enormous statement.
Do you still work for Hawthorn, do you? Because
No, I don't.
forever you're just trying to suppress them the whole time.
I'm not
Now,
trying to
clearly-
suppress them. I actually know them pretty well, and I know that they're not travelling anywhere near as
understand
well
that.
Has
as they have the last couple of years.
got you on speed dial to try and talk them down all the way through?
Who rattled your cage? I see every game Hawthorn
I understand
play,
that.
and I don't think they're travelling anywhere near as well as most people think they are.
Yeah, we really,
Come on.
we really
it's a
appreciate.
little flat, but it ain't that long.
We appreciate Jade Rawlings lending his nose for that prop. It's true. You've done it all year. You got the result you're after.
Not at all. We are here to call it as we see it.
Thanks, Pinocchio. Let's talk about the rebuild, though, because it did start a long time ago, Kingy.
It did. Let's have a look at how Alistair Clarkson, when he got to the club, what was there originally and what he had to work with, Jace. Because, as you said, they were rock bottom.
Yep.
2001, they were able to get these two stars via the Crode and McFarlane trades. So that's a fantastic starting point. And obviously, they're down the doldrums, as you said. Clarkson didn't arrive until 2005, so that's when he walked in the door. They off the back of a 4-win season. And just have a look at the moves that they made immediately. They went for early picks over talent. So they traded out players like Nathan Thompson for Jordan Lewis effectively in 2004. Then they went through to Birchall for Nathan Loney effectively in 2005. Max Bailey come in for Jonathan Hay around the same time. And then they flipped it, Jared. Then they knew they had the foundation of quality talent. And then they went back to the draft and traded some early draft picks for stars. And that's this period here. They were pretty quiet through 6, 7 and 8.
Yep.
Just stayed with the draft picks that they had. They had felt that they'd built the foundation and they were still winning games of football. But once they got to about this area here, 2008, when they won that flag, Jace, they said, OK, we've got to find a way to stay at the top of the tree. And they traded high picks. 2009, you can see that it'll come up in a second. They went for Burgoyne with pick 9 and traded pick 25 for Gibson. Hale the next year for pick 27. Gunston the year after that for pick 24, and so on and so forth. So they end up with only 13 of these 22 that are selected for this year's grand final premiership players for 2015 via the draft. 6 of those players via trade, a free agent, and a couple of rookie elevations. So to see the build has to come back to the coach. He built it beautifully early on, Jace, and then said, OK, we've got a decision to make here. When some others were already going back to the draft table, like Collingwood, who were around that mark already, he went one distinct and clear different direction, and it's paid significant dividends.
Well, there's different sources and methods of getting players, and I think at different stages you go through all of them. But the one thing Alistair did when he first got to the club, he knew there was going to be pain. He's a first-year coach and he's not worried about wins. He said, we've got to build this place from the ground up. And maybe it happened a bit quicker than probably most people expected, but I think it was 5 wins in the first year and then they got to 9 in the second. So all of a sudden a young group picked up a lot of confidence.
Legend has it in the coach's box in his first year when they were in a position to win the game. A couple of his assistant coaches said, why don't you put some players behind the ball? You're in a winning position. He said, no, we are here to learn how to play my way and play winning football. They didn't do that. They lost the game, but he moved on and didn't care. Wasn't about results back in the early years.
That was the key. He was prepared for the heartache that it would take to get to the point that he needed to get to, and that's educating a young group about how he wanted to play the game.
Do you think it had something to do with certainly the compromised drafts, GWS and the Gold Coast taking all the good younger players, that they decided to move away from that a little bit? Or is it more the innovation of an Alistair Clarkson, say, watching free agency unfold in the overseas leagues?
I think it's building a list however you can build a list as best you can, but then maximising the output from those players on the list. Now, that was all a part of his game plan and the style that he introduced. That would make average players very, very good players, build their confidence, and they became genuinely good players.
Is a classic example.
He is. So the list
find
is the
them
list.
everywhere.
He built the foundations and then topped it off nicely, adding those stars for trading early selections. And then it come down to how they would play, Jared. And I think this is one fact that gets lost on most. And we'll have a look at the Premiership Standards quadrant that we've looked at all year and just have a look at the years of Alistair Clarkson. OK, walks into a poor performing team. The green line there is over 100 points on offence. The red line is keeping them under 86 points. If you're in the top left is where you want to be. That's where they've resided for the last few years. But there's the build. You can see them getting better offensively, climbing up that chart, scoring more heavily. 07, working right up the top there. 08, they jump into that premiership quadrant. The hangover of 09 sees them go back bottom right. Poor defensively, poor offensively, and then straight back in. 2011, up in that lower bracket there, just over 100 points on average. 2012, a fantastic season. Didn't quite win the flag. Stay there in 13, stay there in 14. And look at how good they've been defensively this year, around the 70-point mark. So it's their best defensive return. They're getting better defensively and still holding their offensive power. It has to come back to the coaching structure and the way they play.
I think that's something that gets lost on occasions. We all talk about how they can score and how they can kick big scores. Really good attack, really good skill. They defend bloody well.
I think it couples the yin and the yang, isn't it, really? They set up defensively to help their attack and attack to help their defence.
Well, last week I mentioned that either Big Cyril or Little Cyril was going to have a big impact. Little Cyril was my moment of the grand final. He had many of them, but it was that interception that just about killed the game. They were coming pretty hard, the West Coast, but Cyril intercepted it. And don't underestimate what sort of kick that was from Poppy. Got it to Jack Gunston, whose selection was superb. How quick was the mind? Jeremy McGovern didn't know his pocket was being picked. It was a superb moment. Brownie, yours?
But the real stop sign of the Eagles' momentum in that third quarter, Jared, was this. Jack Darling, you would have eaten those for breakfast 99 out of 100. Now we think he was affected by the sun, no doubt about it. But that was the time. He marks that and he kicks the goal. 18 points. What do you think? Actually, I'm not going to let him go because there's no excuse in grand finals, Jace.
I'll tell you what I learned. Amongst all the things that I enjoyed, I didn't enjoy anything better than Ryan Schoenmaker's having success. Here's a young man. You can hear the roar. The crowd recognise it as well. He missed 2012 through injury. He did his ACL and missed 2013. He played in a losing 2012 grand final. Missed 2013 through injury. Didn't recover his form and confidence for 2014. But to fight his way back this year, when again it looked like he might be out of the picture, you can see the joy on all those around him. That's a victory for persistence, hard work, and determination.
I think the whole footy world saluted him on the day, getting his premiership medal.
I think you've got to make a statement early in games, Jared, in grand finals like this and show leadership. And it was Sean Burgoyne and Isaac Smith who ran back with the flight.
That was a great mark.
Absolutely no fear for their own safety. It just set the standard for the day. This is a team on a mission, single focus of winning the ball back. This is why the contested possession battle was so one-sided, Jared, because of moments like this. I haven't seen Isaac Smith do this all that often, but that is a sensational mark. Early in the game, set the standard for lesser talent, if you like, to follow.
So let me go back to that Darling mark you were talking about. We've had a chat about this. I think the footy world is probably being very harsh on Jack Darling because it looks like he's just butted up and dropped an absolute sit-up. Look at the sun. It actually hits him in the chin before he reacts. Yeah. We saw McGovern lose one in the sun as well, but this one hurt. It's unlucky. I felt for him because it was a critical moment that would have got them if he marks and kicks the goal back within 3 goals. So whilst everyone's probably harsh on Jack Darling, I'm just cutting him a little bit slack because that was just a really unfortunate moment.
That was the one time in the game they had a real run on, didn't they?
Yep.
And it was at that time you thought, geez, the Hawks might be in strife here. Maybe the heat's going to have a factor in the second half.
I think every game is
a bit of good cop, bad cop here.
There was nice work,
Well, there won't be an asterisk in the premiership thing where they've got the Hawks there beside it. So these things happen in game.
In many respects, every game is a combination of two issues, crime and punishment. Crime's very much at turnovers. And the Hawks kicked the ball away half a dozen times, but they were never punished the way that the West Coast were. Every time there was a crime and there's a Darling dumb kick. Sorry, a dumb mistake. 50-metre penalty. Another one from Darling. The first one was a Cyril Rioli goal. This one went down and it was also a goal. They just world's best at punishing you, the Hawks. Here's another one. They had 4 or 5 people. That ball should have been killed. It was snuck out the back and then Birchall kicks a goal. Another issue here. Fumbled here from Lacroix. Girea puts it very much to bed. And, well, this was when the game was still in dispute, just before quarter time. Cyril gets the ball. People go to sleep. They're not looking for Brad Hill. Cyril knows that Brad Hill is there. You watch him, he finds him. And once again, the punishment is extreme. And this has been one of the great assets of Alistair Clarkson, both when you turn the ball over and when they turn the ball over. Here's per 100 turnovers. Yeah. They are the best at 106 points. For every 100 turnovers, they score 106 points, and they are so far ahead of the opposition. When they turn the ball over, they get punished the least. And if you've got those two elements right, you're able to make some crimes and you get away with it.
That's football. It's a turnover-based game. 60% of scores come from turnover. So if you can restrict what you cough up, Jared, and punish the others, as you said, you're halfway there.
Good signs for GWS there. They're the only outside of the 8 that are in that stat. And when Shane Mumford comes back, helps their stoppages.
I don't think we should ever understate the importance of the ability to handle pressure, the ability to accept the pressure when you're in front of goals. I mean, Hawthorn kicked 28-8 from set shots throughout the finals. But these kicks had to be kicked.
Yep.
These are the moments where you stay in the game. They're all very kickable, but the pressure of the moment. They couldn't convert when they desperately needed it. And I think at times we undervalue the ability to finish when you just have to,
well,
when your team desperately needs it.
They kicked 28-8 from their 4 finals. That's enormous when you compare it to others.
There was also the poor kicking graphic of West Coast, and that was for the whole September. You can't expect to go through another successful September if you kick your field kickings at these percentages. On the weekend, it was only 56%. So 1 every 2 missed the target. Hawthorn, they're just going to destroy you, aren't they, with those stats?
28-8 from set shots. It's if you could get that return each and every time, you're not going to win too many, lose too many goals. I was surprised that you didn't pick up on Luke Shuey. I know you joke about it on Sunday night, but it was a game and it was a really important moment when he had an opportunity to break clear. And they practice it a lot as well, which I'm sure gets up your goat, Jason. But
they don't miss them at training, Jerry.
They don't. But it's a totally different caper when you have to do it under the pressure of grand final
It is.
time.
That's the only one that missed. That was Simo, the coach, having a go. But to me, this wasn't about the action itself because he's on a tight angle. It's a poor decision. You draw and you give the handball over the top to Cripps and he runs into an open goal. So that was the decision as much as anything
Virgil
else.
held off pretty well initially.
Just jockeyed a little bit.
Just jockeyed,
Yeah.
didn't he? Just puts him down into his decision.
And isn't that the greatness of defence? You've got to sow a seed of doubt. But Shuey's a smart player, should have faded, and you saw the open space that Cripps had.
I thought this was a win for strategy more than anything else. I know contest was very important, Jared, and they got hold of them there, but their ability to play wide. Have a look at the corridor use here. 15% of the time in the grand final. Now, you can see their season average is up around 30% in the qualifying final. First week over at Subiaco, they were still around that mark, 29%. But to only go through the corridor 15% of the time on the weekend showed to me that they said we've got a strategy here of how we defeat the web. And when you look at some behind-the-goal vision, this is early in the first term. This is the Schoenmaker's mark on the wing. So have a look at how many Eagles players are forming the web, which is, as we said last week, it doesn't cover the absolute boundary at the MCG. It does at Subiaco, but it doesn't quite get to the boundary at the MCG, and they stayed wide. And this happened all day. They just worked their way down the ground. They were able to get the ball in deep. Very much a high ball inside 50 kicking operation this week, and the web failed, or they were bypassed. And then there's players that are spare. At the back of the web, you've got 2 West Coast Eagles players there holding back 60 from goal. So they should be pretty comfortable with what's in front of them. But they allow Rioli to get into usable space, and then they allow Hill to stroll in behind. There's 5 or 6 West Coast Eagles players there that were part of the web that just simply failed. Didn't even pick those 2 boys up, and they strolled in and kicked an easy goal. Have a look at Rioli here. There's 6 West Coast Eagles players go at the football and not one player holds out or thinks to cover the most dangerous man on the ground. And he just gets the easiest of handballs here from Roughhead and just snaps truly. We've seen this in real-time vision. This happened, Jared, time and time again. You've got Gunston and Rioli versus 3 West Coast Eagles defenders there. They've got a loose man on Rioli's left, so he's there just to cover any high balls that come in. Rioli's man decides to leave him, hand over to that player on his left. Then you have Mitch McGovern just charge off Gunston there. Now it's a 2-on-1 inside the Hawthorn forward 50. So as soon as they win possession, given their quality ball use, that's going to be an uncontested mark inside the forward 50. They just failed in their own system. Their web failed on the weekend. It was the worst performance they'd had for the year.
I think the question's going to be from Adam Simpson, though. Was it the system that failed, or was it the personnel? Now, I think they would have accepted they were going to go wide. That made common sense to me going in. But what didn't make common sense was some of the absolute skill errors that exposed them at the back. Let's go back to your Cyril Rioli one. Right now, they're in the position that they want with the web. Clearly, they're outnumbering them there. They should have swallowed this ball up. As you pointed out, Cyril's at the back. McGovern hits it. Now, right there, Ellis needs to nail that ball. They've got Shepherd, but Ruffy sneaks underneath. And if he nails that tackle, then all of a sudden Cyril Rioli doesn't get on the finish. Here's another one. Now look at Gaff. Gaff is poorly marking that ball. If he covers that zone, then the ball doesn't go low and flat, and it would have allowed them to cover off. A missed bump here, which allows Isaac Smith to go forward. Another broken tackle coming up. Jamie Cripps, poor. That goes around the corner. A really smart kick here, though, I think, from Gibbo, because it goes underneath, and then, once again, they find Cyril Rioli on the end of it. And here's another one, a final moment. He had a pretty good game, did Sherrod Wellingham. In fact, he had a really good first half. This wasn't his best time. He should have backed back into this pack. So this is skill error, it's decision error rather than system error, because that one also should have been worked. So I think that's going to be the discussion they have over the summer period. How do we tinker with the web, or what do we do with it when it's personnel mistake driven?
Well, there was a lot of discussion about the size of the new oval being built over at Perth there. They're building it the size of the MCG. I think that'll actually help them. At least they get the same dimensions and the reference points of the G.
OK, we had him booked in, as I said at the top of the program, last March. I know you didn't agree with it, Jason. But coming up, Alistair Clarkson is going to join us to talk about how we rebuilt the powerful Hawks.
And that man must be very proud, Alistair Clarkson. His first as coach of the Hawks.
When you start the season 0-3, and it's so easy to think that your season could be gone, especially when you're around 4 games against the benchmark of the competition for the last 5 or 6 years in the Brisbane Lions. But we've got genuine belief in the direction we're taking is the right direction, and to defeat a Brisbane side must give them enormous confidence that they can match it with some of the cream in the competition.
They should enjoy every minute of this victory. A team effort right across the board.
Ryan Franklin and Ruffhead are going to be great key forwards for us eventually, but all today has done is renewed the faith in the direction that we're taking and given the young guys some confidence that they can match it with some of the better teams in the competition.
And I think they were very well coached today. I think Alistair Clarkson and his match committee did their homework wonderfully well.
Well, he's had near on 200 wins as an AFL coach. That was his first one in round 4, 2005. He's also got 4 premierships on his belt, and he joins us on the couch for the 3rd time in a row, Clarko. Congratulations. Thanks again for your time.
Knocked off Brownie, old one. First game.
You got Eddie pretty nervous at the present time, including Lee Matthews.
Yeah, listen, it's been a special period for our footy club, and still keen to go another again.
Can we go back to the round 4 in 2005? An extended look at your press conference. You were asked, you had a lot of uncontested marks. Do you want to play like that? Is that your game style? And you actually, I'm not sure you told a lie or not, but ironically you said, no, we want to play like Brisbane, contested ball. And yet you're one of the best uncontested marking sides we've ever seen.
Yeah, well, the game evolves, and Brisbane at that point in time were just taken all before them in terms of the physicality of the game, and perhaps pioneers of playing bigger bodies in the middle of the ground as well, and especially with Vossi, and Bucks wasn't at Brisbane at that point in time, but he's a real big-bodied midfielder at that point too. So it sort of changed the way the game was played there for a while, but there's a much better balance now between the bigger, stronger bodies as well as those guys on the outside, and we try to do both reasonably well.
Things couldn't have gone much better on the day. The box must have been reasonably calm given the enormity of the occasion.
A bit calmer than normal, Jace. We had a lot of things go our way in terms of our planning and that sort of stuff. I think in hindsight, the qualifying final loss to West Coast was really beneficial for us. It was a catalyst for our players. I don't think we went over to the West in the first week of the final thinking that it was just going to all unfold for us easily, but it was a real wake-up call to make our players realise that we don't apply ourselves in the proper manner. We're not going to get there, and it had not so much to do with strategy, but in terms of the catalyst for all our planning, and our players' application was much better from that point.
I need to ask you about that qualifying final. You were quoted as saying, we made some mistakes. You, the coaches, made mistakes, the players made mistakes, and you took some shortcuts in the preparation. What's that referring to specifically?
Well, it's easy in hindsight to say they are shortcuts. At the time, we didn't think we were taking shortcuts because we'd be filthy on ourselves if we knew of them at the time. But having said that, we've played that ground often enough to know that we should have prepared for it. You got to kick in and zone opposition kick-ins in a different sort of manner on Subiaco Oval than you did, and we didn't do the planning. We didn't line our oval out at Waverley in the dimensions of the Subiaco Oval, and we just did some things leading into the prelim that they're not huge things. We only did it for 10 minutes in our training in the lead into the prelim, but we actually did it. Whereas in the lead into the qualifying final, we didn't intentionally not do it, but it was just an oversight. And then afterwards, when we kicked in so poorly, and West Coast were able to carry the ball out of their defence from kicking so easily, we thought to ourselves we need to address some of those things going into the prelim. Plus footwear, the Subiaco Oval surface is nowhere near as good as many other surfaces around the ground. I don't mean that to have a crack at their curators, but they've got a new ground going to be built in a couple of years, and if you look at there's this weed called POA that's in the Subiaco surface, and players just slip, even their own players. We were watching Ballantyne play a game against Sydney, and one of the best forwards in the competition is just slipping over, just running after the ball, and we just weren't well prepared with our footwear, and so that helped leading into the prelim as well.
Can I ask about your planning regarding rotations and just get you to step through how that unfolded? Andrew Russell's obviously your fitness guru down there. He came up with an idea or an opinion for you to have on what the planning was. Was it aimed to get about 70 at half-time and then try and bank the game early if you can, or was there any planning there?
Well, unless that was Jack's plan, it wasn't mine. No, listen, we had far too many at quarter time. I think we had 37 rotations in the first quarter or somewhere thereabouts. So that was a concern to us, that we had, because of the heat of the day, we had a lot more run-offs than what we normally have, and that was a concern for us at quarter time because you're only allowed 30 or thereabouts for each quarter, and to have 7 over, and at that point in the time, although we're ahead on the scoreboard, we're expecting this game's going to go right down to the wire, and concerned that if we haven't got sufficient rotations in the last part of the game, then that might cost us dearly. As it turned out, we were just able to scale back a little bit over the second and third quarter, so we ended up being okay. But had the game been pretty tight, it might have been. Looks right at the moment as though it was a great tactical ploy, but we didn't intend to do that.
What about in the second half, though? You had 92 marks to 22. It's the biggest differential of any game ever. Was that a conservation of energy, or was it just the way the game unfolded?
A little bit of both. We played a game against West Coast Eagles round 2 of 2013, really hot conditions like the conditions we had to endure on Saturday, and so we knew we could play against the West Coast Eagles side. But there's been some pretty significant personnel changes in both sides since then. But just the pattern of play, and if we were just to play flat out, full throttle for the full 4 quarters in those type of conditions, very oppressive. No team in the competition is going to be able to withstand that type of play for so long. So at different stages you need to conserve your own energy and just try to control the ball from time to time. So some of it was about conserving our own energy in terms of the run. Some of it was also ensuring that if any team was going to have to do the running to defend, it was going to be West Coast. So that was a plan, but at different stages you can get caught up in not moving the ball and taking territory. We did that at the start of the third quarter. We just wouldn't. We're reasonably fresh after half time because they'd have a rest for 20 minutes, but we didn't want to take ground with the ball. And we actually gave West Coast a genuine chance to get back into the contest at the start of the third quarter because we wouldn't take ground with the ball. So it's a really fine line in terms of controlling the ball and. But if you don't carry it forward, your opposition teams press onto the man on the mark and cut down the exits really well if you look like you're going to be too conservative with the ball.
Now, Clark, I looked to me a big improvement from the whole defensive unit compared to that qualifying final. They looked a little bit sloppy with their accountability, and obviously specifically James Frawley started in the back line this time as opposed to the qualifying final. He's come back really well over the last 3 weeks. Did he come and ask you for the Tex Walker matchup 2 or 3 weeks ago after he copped a lot of criticism after the first qualifying final against West Coast?
Oh, we certainly had a discussion. I can't remember whether I initiated the discussion with Chip about that matchup or whether he did, but certainly we had a discussion in that week about Walker had been very influential in their game against the Western Bulldogs the week before, and Chipper was one of 22 that had lowered his colours pretty much in the first final against West Coast Eagles. But that was his first final in his career. Chipper went over there in the West, pretty hostile environment for his first final, but he didn't have 21 mates who were helping him out too much either. And we just couldn't get him the ball. He played forward in the first half of that game, and then to his credit went back in the second half and actually kept Kennedy goalless in the second half in a team that was controlling the ball pretty easily against us. And we just thought that it was a good chance for him to play on a player like Walker in the semi-final and see if he can do the job for us, and he did it particularly well.
Your other key defender, Brian Lake, Clark, is a very interesting proposition. He seems to save his best for September, doesn't he? I think throughout the course of the year, most people thought was probably heading towards a natural end. But then he goes and has a good final series again. He's doing things like this, which I think even had you giggling in the box. You know the team's playing well when he's doing things like that. But has he made it tough, a tough decision now? Is there an argument for a 12-game season for a player, perhaps?
Yeah, there is, and that's we need to sit down with Lakey over the next couple of days, and we'll do so with about half a dozen of our players and make decisions around, because it doesn't just rely, or it's not all based around one player. Sometimes there's a series of players. If someone else goes, then one might stay, sort of thing. So you've got to work out the balance of your list with about 6 or 8 players, some who maybe be considered for trade, some who maybe considered for retirement, some for delisting. So we'll do that over the next 3 or 4 days and sit down with our players. We did some of them today, and we'll do more tomorrow and Wednesday. And once we work out the balance of all that and have those discussions, then we'll make some decisions. But some of those decisions too will be the players coming back to us after they've had discussions with us today and say, what do we want to do with the rest of it? Because we've been able to outline some things over the course of the day today and then again tomorrow that makes the picture a little bit clearer for them and what they might want to do with their footy from this point as well.
But can you carry a spot on your list for someone that might only play 10 or 12 games and say, well, maybe we won't travel with him that often, a Brian Lake, but have him fresh for September to play the big jobs on some of those players? It just seems that he's so good on that stage.
Well, it'd be a bit easier if it was the old days when we used to play and you had 55 on your list. So it's a little bit tougher when you've just got the 40. But for someone like that, it's a specialist position, and that's something that we're going to give some consideration to over the next 24 hours. But
your demographics is getting to a bit of a concern, though, isn't it? Lakey's at the top end at 34. You were the oldest ever side to win a flag. Are we seeing a change that your peak is now getting older? We can see here the Hawks over 30 years of age as of round 1 2016. There's a fair bit of talent there. It's a bit like the Australian cricket side.
Yeah, well, I think it'd be really interesting. I haven't done the stats, and you guys might have done them, or we might do them after this discussion. But I think the whole competition's getting a little bit older.
Bit older, yeah.
There's a lot of guys that are getting drafted into clubs. When I first started, and I was one that certainly weren't eager on getting guys into our footy club that were over 21 years of age, let alone 28 or 29. We took Lakey and traded significant draft picks for Lakey. He was 31 years of age.
Yep.
Now, we couldn't have possibly thought that it was going to work out for Lakey as well as it has, or us, in that 3-year period. But a lot of clubs are starting to look at those mechanisms to top up your list, because the talent hasn't, the top end talent in terms of drafting hasn't been available because of the injection of those two sides from GWS and Gold Coast. So you've had to look to other means to bring players into your club, and I think clubs, their conditioning programs, the way that they manage their players now is much better than it's ever been before, much more professional, and so that's allowing some of these guys to play much longer. You know, like Sean Burgoyne, when we first recruited him, and I was only talking to him about this today. We said this, for this to be beneficial for all of us, Sean, it's got to be a 3-year project.
Yep.
And if anything above 3 years is a bonus. If you don't get 3 years, you may as well stay at Port Adelaide. Now he's at the end of his 6th year. It doesn't look like slowing down anytime soon. So that's all got to do with the game, where we play him, but also the management and professionalism with which he goes about it, but also the way that Andrew Russell and the medical team at Hawthorn look after him.
Another one with conditioning concerns was younger player Cyril Rioli. Obviously won the Norm Smith on Saturday. What's Andrew Russell, the influence he's had on Cyril to turn him around from being his hamstrings went every few weeks to now he seems really consistent? He's had good resilience this season.
Yeah, well, it's a great story, the Cyril one. I mean, even in isolation, he's just been a really special player for our footy club. But the story of him winning a Norm Smith on the back of Morris, his uncle, when he won in 1982, and And then, his uncle Michael Long, when he won in '93 with the Bombers, so three Tiwi boys. I think Cyril been quoted as saying there's only 2,500 that live on the Tiwi, and they've got 3 Norm Smith medalists. So
what was your Norm Smith? What was your Norm Smith voting in the coaching sense? Does some of the efforts of a Smith or even Frawley or a couple of other guys outside of the group that were voted for on the weekend?
Oh, listen, there's half a dozen players that are all significant contributors, and it was the same as last year in the grand final. But we don't sit there and make judgments in that regard. It's just like who played well and played their role, and I can't reveal anything because if I reveal it, it's our best and fairest voting. Yeah. But we're really pleased with the contributions that we had from many of our players over the course of the day. 2
very different versions of the Luke Hodge goal, Clarko. We need to have a look at it because there's a couple of different quotes about it.
You got my quote.
Yeah, exactly. Well, first up, you can see it's a fantastic goal off one step, a banana from the boundary. He's saying he tried to centre it and the wind brought it back. And then they asked the coach what he thought of it, and he said, well, he's kicked it out of his you-know-what. Now, which is the true version?
I maintain that's just come straight out of his quack.
I had a couple of beers in Saturday night, Clarko. He was definitely having a shot, he told me. So he was aiming up. Hey, can we just ask you, how many times do you ring Jace? Do you ring him after each loss, after each bad loss, just to give you boys a bit of a clip and fire the players up, Clarko? Can you just clarify that?
Well, he gave us a clip about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I said he's not part of the inner sanctum anymore.
Still take his phone calls, eh?
Well, we have never believed him. We believe his nose is growing, and you didn't have to give him that cash publicly there earlier. Clark, congratulations. It's been an amazing journey. The Hawks fans couldn't have got themselves a better coach, and congratulations once again, and thanks for joining us on the couch.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. Thanks, boys. Cheers.
Alistair Clarkson, our special guest. And after the break, another premiership coach re-enters the fray with the Bombers, appointing John Worsfold as their senior coach.
On behalf of the Essendon board, it's my great pleasure to announce the appointment of John Worsfold as the 32nd senior coach of the Essendon Football Club.
Probably something that I'd like to clarify is that I never lost the passion, but I was tired at the end of my reign, 12 years at West Coast. From a person who's standing back from afar, I've felt for the Essendon players that they probably haven't had that love of the game as much as what they should have. And I feel refreshed and energetic and really ready to do the job.
John Worsfold, as expected, announced as Essendon coach today. Before we talk about John Worsfold, just going back to Alistair Clarkson, he's had a premiership win 3 times, historic moment in the club. Today he spent 8 hours at the club doing 16 exit interviews. He's got a selection meeting for international rules in the morning and then another 18 exit interviews for players. It's an amazing work rate.
He didn't, I think, took your question about Fife missing the campaigns very well, because he had to then work out who was playing in the midfield for them. But it is an amazing workload that he's taken on. I was surprised that he got so much done today.
He's always that's the type of bloke he is, though. He's always thinking about what's next, rather than reflecting on what's happened. There'll be time for that down the track. But what's next? What's the next thing to immediately address?
So what's next for the Bombers now, Brownie? I think they've got the best man for the job. I think, as Lee Matthews has always said, you're better in your second stint. John Worsfold has always been a great leader, both on and off the ground.
Yeah, he's recharged, he's refreshed. I just wonder what just getting back into clubland's done for him the last 8 or 10 weeks, Jared. No doubt it's reignited, I suppose. Or it probably made him realise how much he actually misses clubland and being the head coach, that's for sure. But he's got experience. This club needs experience. Still got the Asda thing, or the WADA thing, hanging over its head. There's a lot of bruises there. There's probably still a lot of factions at that footy club. You need a senior man that's done it. It's been a premiership coach, got massive respect within the industry to come in and pull everyone together.
One of the things he has said is he's excited by the list, Kingy. Do you think he's maybe overrating the list?
I think his excitement will be tempered over the next couple of months, Chase. Is that a fair answer?
I'm just... you've got to go in there and preach excitement, but I reckon there's still a few holes on that list, so I wouldn't be saying they're going to go bang straight up.
Midfield's a real concern, isn't it? They lack depth.
They've got to land another ruckman.
Yeah, they talk about their spine a lot, but I think their midfield's a real concern.
Spoke to him on 3AW tonight. He's suggesting that Carl Hooker goes back to defence. He likes him as a defender, which means that they've got to go out and find Very hard to find players, and that are key forwards.
They are, but Hooker and Hurley are the type of two key defenders you build a back six around. I'd like to see them settle there, and I agree with him. I think that's the right way to go about it. But it leaves Joe Danaher a bit exposed up forward, and he's still developing. He's going to take years to get to his top because he's so big, so raw, so young.
Very quickly, Harley Bennell, David.
Yeah, he missed his medical on the weekend, which is a real surprise to all, Jared. And I heard his manager, Colin Young, say that he wanted an offer from Richmond before that they'd do any medical. I'm not sure you can commit to a multi-million-dollar deal without ticking off that medical. I'm not sure there was a phone call or two made prior to missing that medical, Jared, to say, look, he won't be coming. So I think that there's more that meets the eye on this one. Wouldn't be surprised if he just decided to make a fool of another set of people rather than just the Gold Coast.
We're expecting an announcement out of the Crows shortly. Don Pike is the man in the frame. Very quickly, do you like extra time, as we saw in the NRL Grand Final?
Not golden point, extra time.
Extra time, yep.
I like the replplay, Jared.
No.
You like the replay.
No.
I'd like to see somebody who's counter to the problem.
I like the fact we haven't got one this year as well.
We're going to take a break. When we return, our final RFIs of the year. Is it beyond bringing the mouthguards to training these days? Because that's what they need. They need one-on-one till you vomit, till you spew, just get the absolute maximum effort out.
It was the single purest one-on-one midfield battle that I can ever recall seeing. How good is this?
Good on Phil Walsh and the coaches for letting it go.
I probably made a little bit of a promise to myself. If I ever did get the opportunity to interview for a senior coach's job, I'd take it.
Incredibly, though, you stopped a club who did nothing wrong from having the capacity to recruit the Sydney Swans.
Well, that's your view.
I can't regard Trent Cotchin and Dustin Martin as A-graders the way they play. They're not doing enough. They're not having enough impact on the game.
Bit of mail they were getting around the Gold Coast like rock stars. Well, at the moment in the AFL world, they're nothing more than a little covers band, Joseph.
Yeah, just a couple of shrinking violets sitting around on the couch, and we'll get you next year too, David. Let's have a crack at our final RFIs for 2015. And I want to start with a bloke I know reasonably well, Callum Sinclair. Didn't have the best of days on Grand Final, but one suspects that A, he should have shepherded this one through, a little bit more energy, and B, if it's going to be a goal you're looking for, at your end, you don't single touch, just signal this. Now, if you want an example, let's go back to Rex Hunt about 20 years ago. This is what you're supposed to do, Callum. Jeez. You will live and you won't make the same mistake in your next Grand Final. Good on you, Rex. Brownie, you're next.
Jared, three-quarter time of the big day.
Yeah.
Callum Sinclair might have did that, but let's have a look at our man Mitch McGovern. Leans over and picks up Hodgie. Then Hodgie tells him where to go, probably.
Sportsmanship.
Oh, well, there's no time for sports. You're down at three-quarter time. I remember the great Michael Voss had a bit of a laugh with James Hird after we got pumped by 10 goals, and Lee Matthews reminded us that we hate the opposition. So never had a smile with them after that. They shouldn't be doing that in GFs.
Did I hear you say there's no place for sportsmanship?
Not during a game.
Wow, OK. I love the Hawthorn players, not just because they're good when the game's on, but even after the final siren, they don't stop communicating, they don't stop instructing each other. Have a look at Luke Hodge up on stage. He's got a speech to make, there's things happening. Jared Roughhead, forever keeping an eye on him, says, mate, Hodgie, it's a pretty happy moment. Any danger of a smile? He says again, Hodgie, smile, will you?
Smile stuff,
yeah.
I'm not happy with the Coaches Association. How Alistair Clarkson has not won Coach of the Year, voted by his peers, is staggering. But there's another little cheeky one, Jared. This is how Luke Hodge entered Mad Monday. It can't read well for him. I'm not sure how he's going to go on the way out. He said, sorry, mate, to that pole as he actually hit it.
And, Jared, we've got a one late and very final RFI that we just needed to introduce. You're on a roll. You have tipped 3 losing grand finalists in a row. You continue to tip the interstate team and you continue to get punished. Now, you said off the top of the show we booked Clarko in 12 months ago. Why would you tip West Coast then?
I'll tell you why. I've got 15 trips to the West next year. Get on board.
Don't start that.
Get on board, Jason. If you ever got yourself on a plane, you might see the opposition as well. Well, that just wraps it up pretty nicely. And can I thank very much publicly the on the Couch team, and it begins with Mike in tape, does a great job. Joshua, the special effects man who actually built the web, Dan Couch, who named the web, JJ and his team, the cameraman and our floor man Belvedere, Bill Cannon, the #1 producer, and of course Libby Hicks, Jason.
Yes, big year for her. Nuptials coming up in November. We'll be there to help us celebrate. We've all had a big year.
Well, thanks for your company. Good luck, Lib, and we'll see you hopefully next year.